everyone. I'm really excited to be part of this virtual AWS user group. My name is Aarti Balakrishnan, and I'm a director in Deloitte's technology consulting practice. Over the last 15 years, I've delivered a number of technology transformation programs across financial services, retail, and telecoms industries. More recently, I work with financial services organizations driving their public cloud adoption journey. A number of these transformation programs begin with a clear articulation of business case. The A teams are brought in to deliver them. What I'm going to be focusing on today is while working on these multi-year transformation journeys, how do you end up setting the foundations that are right, that have the right security and operations built in a way they're able to scale? And finally, how do you sustain the momentum and manage the people and talent through the process? I'm going to do that by talking you through a typical cloud transformation journey we end up working with clients on. The initial step is articulating the business case, which is often predicated on driving business agility and optimized run costs. A clear and important goal is often to move away from on prem implementation to multi region deployments on AWS. More recently, this is evolving to multi cloud discussions. And finally, the move to cloud native applications as a way of delivery and deploying toolchain on the cloud as well. This is a point where clients end up re-evaluating their CI/CD toolchain and how they can sort of use this transformation as the opportunities to set that right. The typical three release approach is something that we've followed across a number of clients. We start with the implementation of the CI/CD toolchain, as that is the foundation for both the platform teams as well as the development teams working on the program. We follow this up by creating common modules where the security requirements are baked in. This is to ensure that the development teams using these modules to deploy resources are compliant from day one. And finally, a release to address technical debt. This is to ensure that any compromise that we've made along the first and the second release are addressed effectively. I'll come to why this three release approach is something that we've tweaked over time. So, first off, one of the key revelations for us, having done this a few times now, is that you have to invest significant time in educating the development teams around the toolchain. The shifting left of responsibility in a DevOps capability, making sure that the responsibility in terms of creating and managing pipelines and managing them as code is something that you'll have to educate a number of developers on. It is always easier for the development teams to talk to one of the platform teams that are sat next to them and request one-to-one support. You have to bake in sufficient time to allow for that at the start of this transformation journey. Second is balancing release from your vendors alongside your own release dates. For example, we were faced with a choice of when we were upgrading from EKS 1.13, whether we go to version 1.14, 1.15, or above. Because we had sufficient time to make those choices, we ended up going for a release that was further forward, and that saved us a lot of multi hop challenges that we would have otherwise encountered. And the third bit, now I'm coming to why this three release model is not the best option, is balancing tech debt, not just based on business release dates, but addressing tech debt across all of the releases. Now, the more recent deployments that we're doing, we're making sure that we account for a couple of sprints of technical debt remediation as part of the core releases itself, rather than make it a separate release after the event. This encourages teams to come up with the time and the designs to ensure that any compromises that were made to get a working solution out there are addressed then and there. Finally, managing costs in lower environments. Both the development teams and platform teams are very keen on building functionality and delivering the functionality and ensuring that things are turned on and tested, but do not always turn them off. Rather than have this responsibility against the platform or the development teams, we more recently started developing solutions that takes the responsibility away from them but defines clear on-off periods and turns stuff off automatically without leaving any responsibility to individuals. Now, if you want to move away from this regular pattern, you follow an exception process, but otherwise things are turned off. This helps manage costs, specifically in large transformation programs, effectively. In summary, make sure that you bake in sufficient time to onboard teams into new tools and platform, because training and education is going to be pivotal. Not everyone comes from the same knowledge base. Second, ensure that you balance out your business releases, taking into consideration any new products and solutions that the vendors are going to come out with. Third is make sure that you address technical debt by accounting some time within each release rather than pushing it all towards the end. And finally, manage costs in your lower environments when not in use. Next, I'm going to talk to you about how to manage security and operations and help this scale across 8 different dimensions. The first is about the build environment. Ensure that you have the right CI/CD tool chain and bake in security within it. By that, I'm specifically talking about static scanning for threat and vulnerability as well as image scanning. Make sure you incorporate new tool sets that you'll require when you're moving to, say, for example, a containerized environment. Ensure that your scanning incorporates container-based scanning, for example. This is essential to ensure that what code at the stage of development has been scanned is the only code that goes on to the production environment. Rather than making it a criteria for production operations, ensure that this is a practice that's baked into how you build code in the first place. Ensure there's a clear articulation of who will be remediating these vulnerabilities. Make sure that the development teams are incentivized to remediate it then and there before moving the code base to the next version. More importantly, also ensure that promotion is only on the basis of having remediated critical and high vulnerabilities. This second dimension is something that's quite close to my heart. We have very successfully, across a number of programs, created and managed secrets, ensuring that these are injected into images, source codes, and builds appropriately. Where it gets a little bit tricky is around managing the rotation and ensuring this does not cause any disruption to service. And over the multiple transformation programs that we've worked on, we've gotten significantly better at that. The next couple of dimensions are also a foundational dimension. One is ensuring that your network is planned in a way where it aligns with the overall release timelines. Second, making sure there aren't static IPs, um, host names, ports, and security groups are all accurately configured. The ingress and egress rules are defined in such a way that they align with the security posture um, relevant to your organizations, and having connected and disconnected environments to make sure that only integration that you want with specific third parties are accounted for in these environments. You will notice that in a number of these cases, you might want to run multiple proofs of concepts before cementing the solution. So it's always good to start out the network releases alongside planning the tool chain so that these are able to scale effectively as you move on over subsequent releases. The next element is identity and access management. Now, you will have to define this at a tool chain level, at an environment level, at a container level, at a pod level, exercising principles of least privilege. Make sure you have enough environments that allow developers the freedom to carry out development tasks, while a number of environments that clearly mirror production so it does not come as a surprise in terms of how services operate in production. Make sure all of your deployments are automated. Now, whether you choose to automate your alpha environments is up to you, but make sure anything that mirrors production is always automated. Takes into consideration again the security and scanning that we were talking about earlier. The next clear and important point is around limiting break glass access. This is particularly important to ensure if your services are automated, you wouldn't need as many break glass scenarios if the monitoring also complements your automated deployment. If you have sufficient sort of dashboards that look after various metrics, break glass would be limited to the absolute uh, mandatory scenarios. In our environments, more recently, we ensure that we have sufficient access within the read-only roles that enable triaging, while sort of designating the break glass for specific instances where none of the read accesses as well as the dashboards provide what is essential. Try and limit this and ensure this is well audited. And once you've learned from specific incidents that have required you to work through a break glass, either automate the resolution or make sure sufficient permissions are incorporated within the read-only roles to allow for investigation and triaging. The next element, again quite critical within financial services, is the segregation of duties. We've noticed that segregation of duties is often treated as an inconvenience when people want to take end-to-end accountability for the solution they're building. But more importantly, it is essential to ensure separation between environments, ensuring promotion only when the code is absolutely what it needs to be in production. Another sort of element that you could sort of incorporate is having blue-green environments where the segregation of duties are clearly incorporated as well. But we've observed that not all of our clients are at the level of maturity where they end up using blue-green deployments to manage changes. In a number of environments we tend to work with, typically um, base AWS AMIs are sort of baked in with security and monitoring agents, and custom AMIs are produced. It's a good advantage having your own custom AMIs, but it's also a significant maintenance overhead. So you have to balance the number of AMIs that you've got. We've had instances where these AMIs are delivered from one of the shared accounts into each of the individual accounts. But over time, we've evolved our approach to be one where it's provided in a shared environment and then consumed by all the sort of subsidiary accounts. Another critical aspect of ensuring your AMIs and base builds are built in a way where there is unambiguous tagging standards. There's an automated pipeline that makes them sort of promoted through each of the environments and then moved into the shared account. And last but not the least, ensuring monitoring and alerting are set up across all environments. There is a tendency to just spend a lot of energy and effort on production, but it's equally important across all environments to identify and manage scenarios. Second, having an SRE team that has the mindset in that every time they see an issue, either in production or a lower environment, they focus all their energies in terms of automating those scenarios and ensuring those dashboards reflect those scenarios as well. So far we've seen typical scenarios and how to consider orchestrating your transformation programs. We've seen across 8 dimensions how to bake in security from the get-go and ensuring that your operations team scale with clear definition of segregation of duties, with the ability to have the right monitoring and dashboard, the SRE function that enables overall automation. Now, finally, we'll start focusing on the people that make this transformation program happen. A number of these transformation programs are often high intensity and require people to put in a number of hours of work to get stuff done. But this is going to be effective only when people end up finding that work meaningful. Second, they're provided the autonomy and the empowerment to get the job done. Third, you don't fill up the sprints to the brim and ensure there's time for slack. This allows for better and more well thought through solutions to come out at the other end. The second pillar is having a hands on management team. Now, by hands on, we do not mean a management team that ends up coding as well. If they can do that, that's brilliant. However, they should be setting up clear and transparent goals, should be an effective coach for the teams. In addition, they also help remediate any impediment and help the team sort of function effectively. The third element is having a positive work environment. By positive work environment, what we mean by this is there is an environment that recognizes high performance, is highly inclusive, and consists of a diverse workforce. In a number of global teams that we tend to operate in, this is a given. But the most important thing is making sure that The work environment is flexible and allows for people that are globally distributed not to be working 24 by 7 just because they want to collaborate with each other across time zones, but allows for a flexible environment where they're able to sort of switch on and off from work and life. The fourth element is about the growth opportunity. Now, we want people to feel that they're supported in their jobs. A lot of times, you're learning new technologies that you weren't familiar with otherwise. They have clear ability to understand growth potential, and finally, a culture of learning where teams share amongst each other. The last and fifth pillar is trust and leadership, a leadership that is unwavering in its articulation of purpose and mission, and continuously invests in people, communicates transparently and honestly, and continues to inspire people on the purpose of their work, is again going to be fundamental. Over the last 15 minutes, I've been talking you through how these transformation programs commence, some of the ways in which we deliver the releases, the lessons that we've learned along the way in terms of how to strategize delivering these releases, how to sort of focus on the key elements that bake in security into your environment, alongside making the operations team function effectively. And more importantly, how do you continue to build and sustain a high performance team culture? I hope you found all of this conversation helpful. I'll open up to Q&A now. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Aarti, who in fact is joining us now, courtesy of Skype. Hello, Aarti. How are you doing?
For you.
I'm not bad. I've just turned your audio on, which was otherwise off, so I think people can hear you now. You've obviously done a lot of this, right? This is a sort of a talk born of a lot of experience. How long does a cloud transformation typically take for the types of businesses that you work with? And I guess I'm assuming that Deloitte primarily works with large enterprise organisations. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, just to give a size and scale of some of the organizations that we tend to work with, these are organizations that have applications on traditional on-prem data centers, about 500 to 600 of them, and they have IT teams ranging anywhere between 10,000 and 200,000 people. The volume of work that needs to be done to enable a public cloud migration of these services um, runs anywhere between 18 months to 3 to 4 years. Majority of the times we're part of most of the transformation journey. Sometimes we're just bootstrapping the initial delivery and then moving on. So it depends on each of the clients.
Gotcha. And when you say you bootstrap in the delivery, there's my experience in the consultancy world has been that it's really important to get kind of buy-in and commitment and ownership from the teams that you're sort of building this cloud stuff for. Otherwise, all the work that you do kind of doesn't really work out in production. How do you drive that engagement?
To be honest, we don't usually struggle with the engagement from technology teams because almost everyone wants to work with the cloud, and getting them excited about it and making the sort of leap from their current work to a more automated life is something that we've seen most of the technologists readily want to move into. I think the struggle has often been with the business stakeholders prioritizing this amongst everything else that they want to get done, with the sort of security and risk teams kind of adjusting their mindset to what it means to secure the cloud, as opposed to securing the on-prem is what we've seen as a challenge often. I would say tech teams have largely been quite excited about the move to cloud.
Gotcha. I've got a question here from Joy of Duck, which is a great Twitch username, who's essentially asking, do you meet resistance? It sounds like you don't necessarily meet resistance in the engineering department, but the kind of the people with the clipboards are the people who are most sort of concerned. How do you get them over that hump? Are there sort of some go-to tricks that you use to help them get a bit more comfortable, or do you rely on sort of C-suite ownership of this being a thing that needs to happen to sort of railroad it through, if you like?
I think we've taken different approaches based on the culture of an organization. So, if the culture of the organization is very command and control, we've spent a lot of time with the leadership teams demonstrating to them it's a lot more secure, or rather, it is as insecure as any on prem implementation would be, depending on how thorough you've been in configuring your solution. If it's more of a engineering sort of upgrade that we need to do, we work with the engineering teams again, demonstrating to them uh, as to how they can secure the solution. More recently, we've taken a completely different tack with one of the larger organizations where um, the leadership team was put through a digital leadership course. What that meant was every business stakeholder had to build an application on the public cloud platform they'd chosen over a sprint. And only when they sort of delivered on those requirements, they were allowed out of that boot camp, for want of a better word. This then gave them an insight on what tech teams actually go through to deliver the business applications that they need, and gave them a good understanding of how to get it done on the cloud and why people are providing the estimations they are in terms of time and effort for what they need to do. Because otherwise, they were largely ignorant about how it got done. They just threw in some requirements and gave in some budget that they could afford and asked the world to be delivered at the end of it. But when they were going through the digital leadership program, they understood what it actually meant, and that completely changed their approach to how they worked with tech teams in making sure stuff got done for the business.
Great. So sort of building empathy by exposing them to the pain. Essentially, that's it's really good advice. So we don't have any further questions from the audience at this point. If anybody does have further questions for Aarti, then you can drop them in the chat, and we'll get to them when we go into the panel when Aarti, Yo-Yu, and also BJ, who's one of the other organisers of this group, will join us. But first, before we go ahead.